Hello and welcome to the webinar on the NHVR mapping project that was launched in December 2023. My name is Michelle and I'll be your webinar moderator. Today you will hear from John Barry, Digital Products Manager at the NHVR, about recent updates implemented and planned to help transport companies plot routes. Like always, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen during the session. Today's webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the NatRoad website and YouTube channel. So welcome, John. Over to you.
So, welcome everyone. I'm here to talk to you about the NHVR National Network Map and some of the work we've been doing to improve that map since its launch on the 20th of December late last year. I'm going to give you a little bit of a live demonstration of that and then also talk about some of the major improvements we have coming up this calendar year. First, I want to talk to you about the platform itself. We've developed the NHVR National Network Map on the NHVR portal, which is our single entry point for industry to access a range of heavy vehicle services. Predominantly, it's been around access permits, but now that we have the National Network Maps, we're expanding that into gazetted notices, and we're looking to integrate that so that there's a seamless experience for all access requirements. The portal also provides a range of information around registration, your vehicle fleet, management of NHVS accreditation, and more recently, compliance information services. But most importantly, not only do we provide services for industry through the portal, we also provide back-end facilitation services for road managers. And that's really important for the National Network Map because it's the road managers who are making the decisions on the network itself and the access on those networks. And we've tried to make that as seamless as possible so that updates that can be made in real time, which is a real change from the way it used to be. I'll show you a little bit of that as well, just to give you an insight into how the NHVR portal supports the National Network Map for road managers. And also a bit about what we're doing to make that even more seamless for road managers and ultimately the publication of those network maps to industry. Now, the National Network Map itself is built on a new platform that we've developed in-house. We're using OpenStreetMap data, and that's important because that enables us to make real-time updates where there's road changes. And that's been a real Achilles heel for previous mapping solutions in the past, where it could take weeks, months. Sometimes some of those updates, we haven't even been able to get onto the map itself. So having that base platform means that now we can correct issues with the road network. It also gives us the ability to allow roads into private areas and driveways, so you can get end-to-end routing, which is our goal. In terms of the benefits that we're seeing already, having a single place to go for heavy vehicle access maps hasn't been achievable until we launched the product late last year. Previously, maps were sourced from various state and territory websites, and getting any sort of connectivity between borders was really difficult. So one of the key benefits is having the maps in one place to go to provide borderless network maps, which I'll show you in a second. As I mentioned previously, map updates have been designed so that they can be made immediately. There is processes in place to ensure that if there is any changes that would remove access, that our team within the NHVR will review those, work with the road managers to understand if there's alternatives. If there is a restriction, a road removal, or even a condition, the system automatically will publish that to the network updates page on the National Network Map, providing 28 days forward notice before those changes are actually published onto the map. So that's already live, and I'll show you the network updates page. That again, for the first time, brings all changes happening to the map into the one place, no matter what state or territory it's occurring in. Ultimately, we're aiming to integrate this with permits and see a reduction in permits through the use of more gazetted access notice maps. underpinning all of that is the workflow. We're aiming to ensure not just seamless and efficient workflow towards the networks being managed, but also consistency in the language used on the maps, and simple conditions and restrictions that are consistent across borders, but also in the way that we depict restrictions and conditions. And we've opted for a traffic light system, which you'll see on the map itself. One of the other issues that have been a long-standing problem with the maps is their availability on tablet and mobile devices. We've gone a long way to improving that with the National Network Map, and we've continued to make some enhancements to make it even more mobile friendly. But we have a few more things we want to do to make that even more impressive as we move towards a more intelligent navigational style of mobile app device. So I'm going to jump into a live demonstration of the map now. So just bear me as I flick across. Okay. So the maps are available from maps.nhvr.gov.au. We have 3 options for viewing the maps. At the moment, it's defaulted to the networks view. This is a sort of temporary default. This view will always be there, but we've defaulted to this view simply to ease the transition for those that have been used to using the existing state and territory-based maps. And then the way that we've designed that mimics the way that those maps were presented on those websites. So we've used the same naming conventions that were used on the previous state-based maps, down to the way that they're categorized and the layout of those maps from a hierarchy perspective to match how the websites in those various states and territories work. So just wait for this to load up. The joys of a live demonstration. So move back here. Got 111 networks in Victoria, so that's probably the most that we've got and we've seen across the states. But you'll notice there that there are different numbers of networks in different states and territories. Let's jump back into Queensland. So with Queensland, they've got 6 networks, networks. Now, each of these networks covers quite a broad range of vehicles. Whereas if you look at what we have with Victoria with 111 networks, a lot more networks, but each of those networks covers off a smaller breadth of vehicle. So everything from a particular network for even down to a make and model here for the pre-approved network for low or zero emission heavy vehicles, down to other broader type of categories like the B doubles. Now you can see with the layout, even by navigating through the state-based networks here, that the issue is that the networks, it's very difficult to understand which vehicles actually apply to those networks, other than going into the notices themselves, which point to these network maps. So one of the important improvements that we've made with the launch of the network map is to provide a vehicle-based view. And so this allows you to go in and find a vehicle that matches your fleet and your requirement. And then we present the networks that are available to you automatically. I'm going to use the B double example here. So if I have a look at a B double, and I'll take one where I know we've got a number of maps already. So the B double up to 26 metre in length. There's no quad axle group restriction in Queensland. If I jump into this map, what you'll see is we've gone through and the system automatically identifies which of those maps in the various states and territories are applicable to this particular vehicle. And then you get presented with essentially a borderless map. So moving from a vehicle-based or vehicle-centric view of viewing maps is important, I think, not just for existing users, but particularly for new entrants into the market to understand simply by looking at a vehicle that I know that this vehicle can travel on these networks. But it's also the only way that we can achieve truly borderless networks, particularly where the different states and territories will develop maps and networks in very different ways, from the 111 that you saw in Victoria through to the 6 that you see currently in Queensland. But that sort of becomes less of a problem once we move to this vehicle-centric model. And in the coming months, we'll be making the vehicle view the default view for users coming into the map. The other view that we have, which I'll quickly mention, is the access instruments view. So this is probably more of a specialist view, but important if you know which particular notice or pre-approval or permit scheme you're running under, you can search for that here. And importantly, this will show you exactly the vehicles that are applicable under these notices. So if I have a look at the Class 2B double, you'll see that there'll be 5 different categories of vehicle within that particular notice. And each of those categories of vehicle will be defined by various states and territories in terms of the networks that they're comfortable with. In Victoria, for example, there is a single network for B doubles, 26 metre, whereas in New South Wales, there's a number of networks for different lengths, which in New South Wales means that there can be greater access provided to a B double operating at 19 metre and additional access as opposed to having a single network. So one of the challenges we've seen with the way that networks are developed is that ideally the more specific the vehicle, the greater access you can give it. So there's not a bad thing having more networks, but how we manage that and make that seamless from an operator perspective is why we've moved to the vehicle-centric view of viewing access networks, which means that we can work with road managers to look at increased access without taking or increasing complexity in what can look like quite a voluminous amount of networks. So the vehicle-centric view is key for us, and we'll be continuing to build on that over time. In terms of the consistency and the standardization we've done to these network maps, if I jump back into the B double, you'll see we've opted for the traffic light coloring system, and that is really simple. So green is access under the conditions of the notice is available for that vehicle anywhere where it's either shaded, there's lines on the map, or there's points. Now, with the shaded areas, it isn't our preference. We have taken the maps as of the 20th of December as they were previously on the state and territory sites. We will be working over time to move to what you see probably more in Victoria, where there is no shaded areas. It's very, very specifically on the roads themselves. We're also not a big fan of the points access, and that can be difficult to read sometimes, and we prefer to have, if there is a turn restriction, to mark out the road as restricted based on that turn restriction as opposed to having points. But these are all part of the next step now that we've brought the maps into one place to start working with state and territories and local government road managers to start improving the fidelity of the maps and getting them more accurate. And where we can, particularly between the borders of local governments and state and territories, improving access and outcomes, which to date has been very difficult without being able to bring them all together in one place. From a map usage perspective, anything which has the green indicator, as I said, will be approved as of right under the conditions of the notice. Where there's yellow road markings or areas, shaded areas or points, they'll represent conditions. And when you zoom into that area and you get to a point where you can see the road network more clearly, you'll be able to click on those particular segments to see what the condition might be. So if I click here, this is conditionally approved, accessible in dry weather only. So anywhere there's a condition, you'll be able to click on that and identify what the condition is. And we've made a number of steps over the last month to improve that accessibility for conditions on mobile devices as well. There's still a little bit more work we want to do there, but that's certainly one of the improvements we've made just to make that more accessible. Equally with restrictions, you'll find those are marked in red. You'll be able to click on those particular restricted roads, or I'll take a point here as an example in South Australia. And again, down at the zoom level, and click on that point will give you the actual restriction itself. So very simple. We've tried to make that as easy as possible. Previously on state websites, there were different ways of representing conditional access and restricted access. You'll find on our layers and controls tab a definite, like a legend, I guess, of how we've attributed approval conditions or restrictions on the map. We've had some very good feedback on the fact that it is a little bit more straightforward to understand. Now, one of the other important things that a number of the different state websites did to varying degrees is providing additional information in the form of layers. And we have incorporated all of the layers, some of which are still specific to particular states and territories, but we've brought them in. Where they are specific to a particular state or territory, they'll be generally labeled with the state or territory. When you click on those particular layers, those layers will come up and overlay on the map. Now, a lot of these layers are being sourced directly from states and territories. So we do a little bit of work to try and standardize them, and we will continue to work with states and territories to help standardize the way that those layers are depicted to make it even easier to use. But with all of the layers, many of them are safety oriented. Roadworks and traffic and hazards are things that we're sourcing, particularly from Victoria and New South Wales, essentially in real time. So most of these layers here, the hazards in particular, are real-time sourced from the relevant state, and we're continuing to build on that. So we'll be looking at what information layers we can source from South Australia, from Queensland, to enrich the map and provide relevant information for planning those journeys directly in the National Network Map. I'll just quickly show you one of the layers. So we've got the hazard layer turned on in Victoria, very similar to viewing restrictions or conditions on the network map. You can zoom into the relevant area, and simply clicking on a segment on that map will give you the restriction. It's actually a road restriction, so I'll jump out of that. And I'll show you one of the flood restrictions. So you'll see here that the haloing effect that happens with the layers, which allow you to see what's accessible on the particular road, but then where there's a layer turned on, and this is the hazards layer, you'll then be able to click on that and see what that particular hazard is. So in this case, there's a speed reduction due to road damage. So there's been a few improvements to add in these icons. There's a little bit more work we have to do to improve the visibility of structures and railway crossings. I'll show you what we've managed to progress so far, but we're looking to roll out structures and railway crossing information layers that are available directly from the network map and visible at a higher view, zoom that's currently visible at the moment. We do have PBS layers in Victoria, which I'll jump to now to give you an idea of what that will look like. So I'll jump into Victoria's networks. And I'll have a look at the PBS combinations. So I just clicked on a favorite. This one keyboard's a bit sticky. Okay. Just gonna take a different tack for a sec while I sort my sticky keyboard out. I'm going to jump into the network updates view. So I mentioned earlier that not only have we brought all the maps into a single location, but we've also brought all updates to maps in a single location now as well. So just disconnecting my mouse because it's giving me a bit of hassle. 1 sec. Again, the joys of a live demonstration. So with the network updates view, this is essentially a single location now for all updates that are happening to the national network map. The updates have been recorded since the 20th. So you can see here, oops, still having some problems here. I'll jump into the slides if this play up for me. So with the update section, that's where we're recording all changes that are happening, and not just changes to the networks, but also the relevant vehicles that are affected. So from that network updates page, you'll be able to view and search for particular vehicles and see changes that are happening on any of the networks across any of the states and territories we have currently on the national network map. Importantly, this is where publication of updates for things that are changing in the future will be made as well. So from this view, you'll be able to see exactly what's been amended, whether there's been conditions added. We're looking to improve this particular view to take you to the map itself and show you visually what the changes are. So that's one of the important improvements we're looking at this calendar year. But we have, again, had good feedback from at least having one place to see what changes have been made, and of course, what changes are going to be made from a future publishing date point of view. As an example here, you can see a future published date for this particular change to amend roads for the road train in Charters Towers Regional Council. The importance of that is it provides the ability to prepare for those changes. There is a subscription service, so you can subscribe to these changes. The subscriptions are available directly from the map itself, for whichever vehicle that you're looking at. We are going to look at improving that subscription service to allow you to target specific states or specific vehicles directly. At the moment, the subscription service will give you any updates that are happening to any of the networks across the country. So it's a bit broad at the moment, but that'll be improved later this calendar year as well. So that's the key features of the national map. I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint now. I did have some of this there, which I didn't have to use all of them. So I said earlier that there was a number of services within the portal that we've made available to road managers, and it's important because it really powers the national network map and the efficiency and the way that we can use that to help improve access outcomes by working with road managers, showing them the connectivity or lack of connectivity between borders or roads between local governments and state, and helping to improve access where we can safely. The tools that we provided are three. The road management tool is an important underpinning tool. What it essentially does is allow road managers to say, look, I'm the decision maker for access, heavy vehicle access on these road segments. You'd think that wouldn't be such a problem, but this tool went live back in 2022. December 2022, and since then there's been 12,000 roads across the country where the decision maker has been corrected because it was wrong. That we've also found over time that changes in policy can change the decision makers. So in Victoria last year, the decision was made that at entries into state highways, which used to be local government owned, that there'd be dual ownership. So that there was safe connectivity between those interfaces. And in many cases, it's simply because there was never really, to start with, a heavy vehicle access database for who's the access decision maker for roads. And it defaulted to, if it wasn't a state road, then the council would be the one responsible. And in many cases, that's not true. So it's important having this baseline of data that can be maintained means that we know and industry knows who the decision maker is for making access consent decisions on roads. That information is available through the National Network Map as well. You'll be able to click on a segment and see who the road owner is. From there, that's how we've then built out what we call the network management tool. So you're seeing a view of essentially an editor for a road manager to make updates to a network, essentially in real time. So they can add conditions, restrict access, remove access. It goes through a workflow process. If it's expansion of a network, so unconditional, essentially adding roads to the network, as soon as that update is submitted, it's published onto the national map in real time. If there are conditions or restrictions being added, the workflow will pick that up. Our team will review that, work with the road manager where we can to understand if those conditions or restrictions are required, or if there's a different way of providing and maintaining access. If that is approved, then that will go through that 28-day consultation process where it will get published onto the network updates page, and subscribers will be able to view that. There is a process there. We contact the NHVR and the road manager to talk about the change being made, and part of that consultation process enables us to then also provide new ideas if there's alternatives that might be more beneficial for industry to accommodate for those changes, may it be for roadworks or change in the condition of a structure, or whatever the case may be. So we really do see this moving ahead into a much more collaborative system, particularly because it's essentially a real-time solution, building on that OpenStreetMap database, which allows us to maintain the road network in real time, and then the network builder tool here, supported by that road management ownership tool, which enables us to then contact and deal directly with the relevant road managers as efficiently as possible. Okay, so looking ahead into the future, there's a number of new access technologies that are emerging. And so the key one of those is coming through what's known as the National Automated Access System. That will bring together automated solutions that essentially deliver dynamic network maps that are more tailored to the very specifics of a vehicle, again, to ensure that the greatest access possible can be provided to vehicles. So the National Network Map has been designed to accommodate and link into those new access technologies to maintain that single entry point for industry to deliver a national solution. Within the portal, one of the things that we'll be working on is building up the ability to view a map for any combination you may have in your fleet. So one of the enhancements being made over the next 12 months is to build in the registration information, use that registration information to identify the configurations that are available, also provide what we'd call a marketplace for new designs. So even if the vehicle hasn't been built yet, PBS design approval has been submitted and approved. From that particular vehicle specification, we want to be able to provide an access map simply based on the dimensions, masses, and in particular axle spacings, but also for PBS, some of the performance characteristics of that vehicle. So we can supply that into automated access systems and present a map that provides the greatest access for that vehicle. The example here is jumping into essentially a PBS vehicle on the national map. One of the improvements we're making this calendar year is to integrate existing permits that may be available. So the national map currently provides the networks under notice pre-approvals or permit schemes. Looking at September timeframe to be able to provide the permits that are available for that vehicle. Obviously, that will require the operator to log in so that their permits become available, and then providing that in an integrated view. So whether the vehicle, whatever access is available to the vehicle under notice, can then be combined and viewed with the access that's available under the permit, which would provide the full access available for that particular vehicle. We're also looking at pre-approved networks. So there's pre-approvals are in place with a lot of road managers and particular councils who are not quite ready to move access onto a gazetted notice, but they're happy for a permit application to come in and be essentially pre-consented based on the pre-approval. Now, we want to take that and expose that information to industry through the national map so that you're aware of what pre-approved networks exist. And then we're looking to make that process of applying for a permit essentially instant. So you can get access to that network and a permit issued in real time. So it's something we're working through at the moment. That would help to expose those networks and give access to those networks in a way that's very, has the same certainty as access under a notice network. It's instantly available. It's just issued in the form of a permit. So again, that's something we're looking at in the next 6 months to improve the access and provide as great as access options, particularly with where those preferences lie with certain road managers. Building into the automated solutions, there's already work being done now with Victoria on their automated assessment structure system. And we're aiming to be able to bring that in. So that's something that can be used to help more efficiently process access permits. But we also want to look at bringing that solution into pre-approved networks. And ultimately through the NAS, the National Automated Access System, of which this Victoria module will come apart, deliver that through the national map. And what that will do is provide the ability to have structures and even other types of pinch points in the network, for example, short stacking distance, swept path, and have the national map essentially talk to specialist systems through the NAS and provide that information back on restrictions or conditions in real time. And what that will allow you to do is to change the vehicle that you're looking at. And in this case, I'm going to change the masses on the axle. And again, in real time, essentially the national map talking through the NAS through these automated modules will send that vehicle information in. The system, particularly the one that Victoria is working on, but there's also other modules that do that. So Tasmania, New South Wales, Queensland have modules that are looking at doing exactly the same thing, and this already happens in Tasmania right now, is giving that vehicle, that's bespoke vehicle, assessed against the particular structure and coming back. And in this case, operating at that particular mass, the previous restriction doesn't apply. That bridge is capable of that vehicle traversing that at that particular mass. So this is how we're looking to greatly improve access outcomes by leveraging automated solutions that allow for specific vehicles to be assessed as opposed to envelopes of vehicles, which can often lead to constraints in the access available. It's maximizing access is the key, but also keeping it in a central location so that as these new technologies become available, you no longer need to jump out of the national network map, that those new improvements will become apparent through the map itself. So those improvements will continue to build and build and build as we get closer to those fully automated type solutions down the track. Finally, one of the key things we're aiming to do with the maps themselves is to move to support real-time heavy vehicle navigation. And that's why earlier I was talking about the our preferences to not have shaded areas and points. Having the access denoted directly on the road segments itself, on the roads itself, is the key to enabling heavy vehicle routing. And so we want to look at intelligent routing that's available to snap routes and navigation to preferred or gazetted or pre-approved networks or even permitted networks, and deliver that through a solution that ultimately can be picked up by the mobile app developers to deliver solutions like this, where we can have real-time heavy vehicle navigation taken into account, published networks that can be updated in real time, and that include information that's specific to heavy vehicles. So turn limits for trucks, the GCMs on bridges, the height restrictions that may be on roads going underpasses. So all of that's going to take a lot of data and information, but the framework and the platform that we built in supports this. And so we're hoping to do some early pilots of this concept later at the back end of this calendar year. But in the new year in 2025, this is where we want to start looking at intelligent routing, and then how this can be picked up by the mobile app providers, whom we're talking to already about the opportunities available through the spatial platform and the National Network Map itself. Thank you very much. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, John. Just two questions. Is there a risk that drivers will still have multiple maps in the vehicle, for example, their own GPS system? And how will these maps and resources be communicated to transport companies using their own maps?
So if the question, just to repeat that, was that is there an issue with multiple maps?
Yeah. So for example, if someone had their own GPS system that is not tied into the NHVR system, just like Google Maps, for example, or another navigation system, is there still a risk that drivers might be using those maps? And and how will these new resources be communicated to drivers like that or companies like that who might be using their own systems?
Yeah. So yes, certainly at the moment, there is no solution for heavy vehicle routing other than bespoke solutions that are trying to use maps that previously existed. And most of those solutions that we know about with the vendors that we're working with were state-based, and the use of Google Maps or Apple Maps, we know that that is used, but there is also no heavy vehicle support there. So our vision is to change that, to provide an open, essentially heavy vehicle oriented service that would replace that Google Maps, Apple Maps for heavy vehicles. That's really down the track. I think at the moment, though, the national map itself provides the networks in an open format, and we're already working with a number of the in-vehicle navigation providers to say, source the maps from here, and at least then you can provide those as networks on your solution. There's a number of from the permits at the moment. It's a little bit clunky. You can download those permit networks in what's known as a KML format, and you can then load those up into. You can even load that up into Google Maps, and that will give you a view of that network. So at this stage, there's no heavy vehicle routing, but what there is and what's available, I guess, to operators at the moment is the ability to say, here's the network, either your permit or a gazetted network, and then the route, I guess, that your planners or schedulers would use would essentially work within that. And that's what would get published generally to the in-vehicle navigation device. So there's a lot more work to make that a lot more efficient, and provide ultimately what could be just an open app that just allows you to navigate based on your vehicle and automatically mapping that to the networks, which you've seen we're already starting to do. But getting to that end state, I think we're probably 2 years away from being able to provide what will be an open service. So we'll work with the in-vehicle navigation vendors to help them integrate and leverage the capabilities. But these services, in terms of intelligent routing, the national network maps themselves, these will all be freely accessible and open, and we'll be providing a routing service within the national map itself, which will be freely available to industry. So we're working on both fronts, but there is still a bit of work to do to get to that point where we get industry off what is essentially light vehicle-based navigation services, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, John. We don't have any other questions. Thank you for making the time to talk to us today. If you have any questions, please email info@natroad.com.au and we'll be happy to pass it on to John. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone.